President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met at the White House for that high-stakes meeting focused on strengthening Ukraine's military capabilities. The president expressing optimism about convincing President Putin to end the war.
Well, let's see what happens. I mean, you know, what if? I think he will. I think that President Putin wants to end the war, or I wouldn't be talking this way. I think he wants to end the war. I spoke to him yesterday for 2.5 hours. We went through a lot of details. He wants to get it ended. I think that President Zelensky wants to get it ended. Now we have to get it done.
All right, we're awaiting word from Zelensky at the White House there. And, of course, that potential and that meeting with the Russian president. Strategic Director for Concerned Veterans for America, John Byrnes, joining us now. John, what's your first take on the fact, given everything we saw in the Middle East play out earlier this week, what's to come here as it involves Russia and Ukraine?
Well, the first take is it's great that talks have kind of restarted. Obviously, there was a lot of negotiating going on earlier in the year. The Mideast kind of took over the news cycle. It took over the diplomatic cycle. It took over the administration's efforts in a lot of ways. So getting Putin and Zelensky back to the table is a great first start. Obviously, the president started with President Zelensky, but he's got a scheduled phone call with Putin. Cautiously optimistic, as always, that this is the start of something really good and that we get a great peace out of this with benefits for everyone, where we have an armed neutral Ukraine, where President Putin is no longer aggressive in the Ukraine, and where the United States doesn't have to secure Ukraine's future.
Does Zelensky walk out of this meeting with the security guarantees that he's been asking for?
I seriously doubt it unless the Europeans want to make it for him. I don't see, with everything that the president's been saying about kind of drawing back from Europe, that he would commit the U.S. nuclear umbrella and he would commit NATO personally, or NATO even officially, to defending the Ukraine, to a security guarantee. I think it's more likely that there's a negotiated peace where there are consulting conversations, where Putin agrees that Ukraine can survive, stay armed, just enough to kind of keep it at bay. I hope that President Putin is at a point where he's seen a lot of loss of blood and treasure. The Russian economy is not where it was 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago. So cautiously optimistic. I don't think that Zelensky gets a security guarantee.
Did you think, or I suppose in the people in your world, that there would be a ceasefire first in the Israel-Gaza situation before there would be a Russia-Ukraine, or does this seem, at least at this juncture, as something that's more difficult to broach?
Well, these are always difficult to broach. I think there was a lot of domestic pressure on the president to solve the Gaza-Israel situation first. But I also think, that they're smaller countries. In some ways, it's a longer protracted conflict. In other ways, it's, in terms of the most recent iteration, it's a shorter conflict. There were some hostages that were, I don't want to be facile here, but they were some very, very solid things that could be negotiated that would give both sides something to grasp onto right away. I think that's a little harder with the Ukraine-Russia situation. But again, they're back to the table. We've got bilateral talks with the U.S. in the middle. Hopefully that can turn to a trilateral conversation where Putin and Zelensky and Trump are sitting down at the table.
Would that, to you, signal we're on the right track? Is that what needs to happen, trilateral negotiations here with the three of them together?
Well, I think it eventually has to be trilateral negotiations. And again, that could possibly be with the U.S. as a buffer. But I think at the end of the day, I think you're not going to get Zelensky to agree to a deal that Trump and Putin cut, and the same goes for Putin. I don't think he's going to agree to a deal that just Zelensky and Trump do. It might have to be round robin because they don't want to sit down at the table, but I'm hopeful that they'll sit down at the table. I think there's a faster track to peace if we can get all the parties in one place.
All right, we know the president is expected to travel in the coming days to visit with President Putin in Hungary. We'll see what comes of that, and if potentially there is that third party that's added to negotiations there. John, always good to talk to you.
You too, Marina. Thanks for having me on.